She asked for milk, just one bottle. He was a millionaire, used to people asking for money. But her quiet promise to pay him back when she grows up changes everything. What starts as a simple act of kindness becomes a story that will touch your heart forever. Hey family, welcome to Real Heart Stories. Please subscribe and give this video a like. It truly means the world to us. Don't forget to share it with your friends and loved ones, and turn on post notifications so you never miss a new upload. Thank you so much for the support. Now, sit back, relax, and let's dive into today's story. Daniel Kane was a man who lived life at full speed. Every morning, his day was packed with meetings, phone calls, and decisions that shaped millions of lives. His name was known in the city's tallest towers, and his sharp suits and sleek car made him look like someone untouchable. But that morning, something inside Daniel wanted to slow down. He wanted to step away from his usual world of power and money, just for a little while. He decided to walk into a small grocery store near his office. It was a simple place with bright lights and shelves full of food. He needed a few things, some fresh fruit, a bottle of water, maybe a snack for later. Daniel moved quickly through the aisles, his polished shoes clicking softly on the floor. His mind was already on his next big meeting. But then, something caught his attention. As he stepped out of the store, carrying 2 plastic bags, a small hand gently tugged at his jacket sleeve. He turned slowly. Standing in front of him was a little girl. She couldn't be older than 8. Her hair was braided but messy from the wind. Her dress was faded and worn thin at the edges. Her shoes looked too big for her small feet, as if they were passed down to her. In her hands, she held an old plastic bottle, half empty and scratched. Daniel looked down into her eyes. They were calm. They didn't beg. They held something else, hope, and something he hadn't seen in a long time. "Excuse me, sir," the girl said softly. "Can you please buy me some milk?" Daniel blinked, surprised by her quiet voice. "I don't have money now," she continued, "but I promise I'll pay you back when I grow up." Her words struck him like a quiet thunder. It was not a demand. It was not a plea for pity. It was a promise. Daniel's mouth opened, then closed again. He searched for words but found none. The city around them bustled on. People hurried past without noticing. Cars honked. Vendors shouted their deals. But Daniel only saw the little girl. She looked up at him, waiting, trusting. "What's your name?" he finally asked. "Hope," she said simply. "Hope." Daniel repeated the name slowly. Felt like something precious. Hope tightened her grip on the bottle. "My baby brother is crying at home," she said quietly. "We ran out of milk. Grandma said maybe someone would help." Daniel felt a lump in his throat. He did not know what to say. Instead, he reached out his hand. "Come with me," he said. Together, they walked back inside the grocery store. Hope's eyes grew wide as they reached the dairy aisle. She looked at the rows of milk cartons, some big, some small. She picked a small carton, the right size for her family's needs. Daniel paid for the milk and handed it to her. "Thank you, sir," she whispered, before he could ask anything else. Hope turned and ran out of the store, holding the milk close. Daniel watched her go, feeling something inside him stir. He wanted to know more. Where was she going with the milk? Who was she? Without thinking, Daniel followed her. He stayed a few steps behind, careful not to scare her. His heart was pounding. The city suddenly felt different, quieter, softer. He knew this moment would change everything. Hope walked quickly, her small feet moving with purpose over cracked sidewalks and broken tiles. Her arms were wrapped tightly around the milk carton like it was something precious, because it was. To her, it was more than milk. It was peace, comfort, and the answer to her baby brother's cries. Daniel followed from a short distance. He didn't know why. Something had pulled at his heart when she ran. Maybe it was her voice. Maybe it was the promise. Or maybe it was because no child should have to ask a stranger for milk with such dignity. The neighborhood was a world away from the life Daniel knew. The buildings were old, their walls stained and patched with years of wear. Wires hung low from street poles, and children played barefoot in the dusty roads. Hope turned into a narrow alley, then up the rusted stairs of a faded brick apartment building. Daniel stopped across the street and waited. From his spot behind an old gate, he saw her knock twice on a blue-painted door. The door creaked open, and she slipped inside. Something made Daniel walk closer. He reached the side window of the building. The curtain was thin. Through the gap, he could see just enough. The apartment was small, very small. There were no tiles on the floor, only concrete. A single mattress lay in one corner, shared by 3 small children. The kitchen was barely a counter and a sink. The fridge stood open. Inside, he saw a half loaf of bread, a bottle of water, and now the milk Hope had just brought home. Hope moved around quickly, like she had done it 100 times before. She found 3 plastic cups, poured a little milk into each, and carried them carefully. She gave the biggest portion to an elderly woman lying on the old couch. "This is for you, Grandma," Hope said softly. The woman sat up slowly and smiled, coughing as she reached for the cup. "Thank you, baby. You did good." Hope nodded. Then she walked to a baby boy on a blanket on the floor and helped him sip from a small cup. She kissed his head gently, brushing back his curls. The last cup went to her younger sister, who couldn't have been more than 4. The little girl smiled and whispered, "Yay, milk!" But Hope didn't pour any for herself. She watched the others drink, her hands folded in her lap. Outside the window, Daniel felt a strange ache in his chest. He looked at the bag in his hand, filled with fresh fruit, snacks, a smoothie, and bottled water. He had bought them out of habit, not need. He turned and walked away slowly, back to his car. But halfway there, he stopped. He stared at the sky for a moment, thinking about his own childhood. His mother used to water down milk to make it last longer. He remembered the sting of hunger, the kind that makes you feel cold even when the sun is out. That night he returned. Not to knock, not to speak. He came with 4 bags of food, milk, bread, rice, fruits, eggs, and even some toys. He set them down at the apartment door quietly, carefully. Then he turned and walked back into the night. He didn't want praise. He just couldn't forget what he'd seen. And he knew deep down that this was only the beginning. Daniel couldn't sleep that night. He lay on his silk-covered mattress in his luxury penthouse, staring at the ceiling. The image of Hope's small hands clutching the milk carton haunted him. He had lived a life full of money and success, but he couldn't shake the feeling that the little girl with the tired eyes had just given him something far more valuable than any business deal ever had. The next morning, Daniel did something he hadn't done in years. He drove to the neighborhood he had grown up in. It was far from the world of black-tinted cars and corner offices. The streets were narrower. The buildings were older, but something about it felt honest. He parked and walked the same sidewalk where he used to ride his bike as a boy. He saw his old school. The fence was rusted now, the walls faded. Kids still played soccer in the dusty field. He smiled. This was the place that shaped him. Not the office towers. Not the bank accounts. It was here. His mind drifted back to his own childhood. The late nights his mother worked cleaning houses. The days he went to school hungry. The small acts of kindness from strangers that helped them survive. "I forgot," he whispered to himself. "I forgot where I came from." Later that day, Daniel returned to the old brick building where Hope lived. He didn't knock. Instead, he waited across the street, unsure of what he wanted. Minutes later, the door opened. Hope stepped out holding a bag of empty bottles. She was going to sell them for coins. Daniel crossed the street slowly. "Hope!" She stopped and looked up, surprised. "You came back," she said. "I did." She shifted on her feet. "I'm sorry I ran off. I just had to get home." "It's okay," he said gently. "I understand." They stood quietly for a moment. Daniel bent slightly. "Would it be all right if I met your grandma?" Hope looked uncertain, but then nodded. Inside, the apartment looked even smaller up close. But it was clean. Everything was carefully placed. The old woman on the couch sat up straighter as they entered. "Grandma," Hope said. "This is the man who bought us milk." The woman smiled. "You're kind." "Thank you." Daniel nodded respectfully. "Your granddaughter made me a promise. I believe her. The woman's eyes softened. Hope is always trying to carry the world. Too young to worry so much. Daniel sat in the wooden chair beside her. How are you managing? We do what we can. I used to clean houses, but my legs can't take it anymore. Their mother, she passed. Their father's never been around. Daniel felt a weight in his chest. Hope stood quietly in the corner, hugging the empty bottle. May I help? He asked. The woman looked uncertain. We don't take charity. It's not charity, he said softly. It's an investment. In hope. Her eyes studied him for a moment. Then she nodded slowly. That evening, Daniel arranged for groceries to be delivered every week. He also called someone he trusted and asked them to help enroll the children in a better school. One with meals, books, uniforms. As he ended the call, he smiled. This wasn't just about milk anymore. It was about remembering who he was and helping someone else become who they could be. Hope's promise had planted something deep in his soul, a seed, and it was beginning to grow. It was a quiet Saturday morning when someone knocked on the faded blue door of apartment 3B. Hope was helping her sister comb her hair. Their baby brother was napping on the mattress, and Grandma was sitting in her usual corner, knitting a scarf from scraps of old yarn. No one expected visitors. They never had visitors. Hope stood slowly. She walked to the door, her bare feet quiet on the concrete floor. She opened it just a crack, and froze. There he was, the man from the store, the man who had bought the milk, standing in a white shirt and dark jeans, holding 2 more bags of food. Hi, he said gently. I hope it's okay. I brought some more things. Hope blinked. She looked back at her grandma, who was trying to stand. Who is it, baby? Grandma called. Hope opened the door wider. This is the man. The one who helped me yesterday, she said softly. Daniel stepped in, carefully wiping his feet on the mat. You can call me Mr. Daniel. Grandma squinted at him, unsure. I don't want to trouble you, Daniel said. But I saw Hope yesterday. She left an impression on me. She has a way of doing that, Grandma said, her voice raspy but kind. We don't get help often. Most people just walk past. Daniel looked around. The apartment was even smaller than he remembered from the window. But what struck him most was how clean it was. Despite having so little, everything was neatly arranged. He handed the bags to Hope. There's food in there. And some books, for you. Hope opened one of the bags slowly, her eyes going wide at the sight of apples, cereal, rice, and even cookies. Are you sure? She asked. We don't have money to pay. Daniel knelt to her level. You already did pay me, remember? Hope looked puzzled. He smiled. With your promise. Grandma watched them carefully. You a father, Mr. Daniel? No, he said, shaking his head. I've never married. No children. She nodded slowly, studying him. Then maybe the Lord brought you here for a reason. There was a long pause. Then Daniel turned to Hope. Can I ask you something? She nodded. Do you go to school? Hope's face dropped a little. I used to, but Grandma got sick. I help her now. Maybe I'll go back next year. Daniel nodded slowly. You're smart. You should be in school. Hope looked at her feet. It's okay. One day, when I grow up, I'll take care of everything. Something about how she said it broke Daniel's heart a little. Would you let me help with that? He asked. She looked up, surprised. Not as a handout, he said quickly. As a friend. A real one. Grandma sat up straighter. You mean that? I do, Daniel said. Hope smiled shyly. That afternoon, Daniel made a call to a private school in the area. Then another to a doctor for Grandma's checkup. Then to a lawyer, to see if there was a way to support the family without making them feel like a charity case. By sunset, he had returned with something even better than food. Hope now had her own backpack, new shoes, and a school uniform in her size. She hugged the shoes tightly like they were gold. I'm really going back? She whispered. Yes, Daniel said. Starting Monday. Then she did something unexpected. She hugged him, not out of habit, not out of politeness, but out of pure, overflowing joy. Daniel didn't move for a moment. Then slowly he wrapped his arms around her. Something shifted in him that day. Not as a businessman, not as a millionaire, but as a man who had finally found something money couldn't buy. Promise that changed everything. The first day of school came quickly. Hope wore her new uniform. Clean, well-fitted, and brighter than anything she had ever owned. Her shoes, stiff and shiny, clicked softly as she walked beside Mr. Daniel to the school gate. He had offered to drive her, but she said, "I like walking. Makes me feel strong." Daniel smiled. "All right, strong girl. Let's walk together." The school was bigger than she imagined. The walls were painted bright blue and white, and children with backpacks ran across the courtyard. Some waved at her. Others looked curiously. She felt small, nervous, but Mr. Daniel bent down and whispered, "You belong here just as much as anyone." She nodded and walked through the gate. He watched until she disappeared into the building. Then he stood there for a while, longer than he expected, before returning to his car. That evening, Hope returned home glowing. "I read 3 stories," she told Grandma, "and my teacher says I'm good at spelling." She couldn't stop smiling. Her baby brother laughed along with her, clapping his hands. Even Grandma looked better. A nurse had come by earlier, sent by Daniel, to check on her blood pressure and bring some medicine. Hope looked at Daniel that evening with deep, thankful eyes. But she said something unexpected. "I still want to pay you back." Daniel looked confused. "Hope, this is a gift. You don't owe me anything." She shook her head. "I made a promise. I always keep my promises." He leaned back in his chair. "Okay. How will you pay me back?" Hope thought for a moment. Then she said softly, "One day, when I grow up, I'll help someone too. Someone small like me. I'll do it because you did it for me." Daniel's throat tightened. "That's the best kind of repayment," he whispered. Later that night, he sat in his apartment. Penthouse view, shining lights below, and stared at the untouched glass of wine beside him. He remembered when success was the only thing that mattered, when helping others felt like weakness. He remembered people asking for help, and him brushing them off with a check or an excuse. But Hope didn't want pity. She didn't beg. She made a promise. And that made all the difference. The next weekend, Hope asked if she could visit Daniel's office. He agreed, curious. She walked in wide-eyed. The building had marble floors, glass elevators, and busy people typing at desks. She held her little notebook tightly. "Are all these people working for you?" she asked. Daniel laughed. "Some of them, yes." She scribbled something in her notebook. "What are you writing?" he asked. "My business plan," she said proudly. "When I grow up, I'll have a milk factory, so no child ever has to ask for milk again." He blinked. She meant it. Hope wasn't dreaming small. She was planning big. He sat beside her, watched her sketch little cartons, and smiled. This wasn't pity. This was potential. This was purpose. That night, Hope wrote something in her journal, next to her drawings. "Mr. Daniel helped me, not because he felt sorry, but because he believed in me, and I'll prove he was right." Daniel never saw the words, but somehow he felt them, in the way she looked at life, in the way she held onto her promise, in the way she reminded him that the smallest voices can echo the loudest. Weeks turned into months, and hope began to bloom. She could now read full pages without stopping, answer questions in class, and even help her little sister with numbers. Her teachers were amazed, not just by how quickly she caught up, but by how serious she was. "She's always asking how things work," one teacher told Daniel. "How factories make milk, how people start companies." She even asked about taxes. Daniel laughed. "She's got plans." One Friday afternoon, Daniel picked her up from school. Instead of heading straight home, he asked, "Want to see something cool?" "Is it about milk?" she asked, eyes wide. "Kind of," he said. They drove across the city to a large building, a bottling plant Daniel had invested in years ago. Inside, machines hummed, workers moved quickly, and cartons rolled down conveyor belts. Hope stood in awe. "Is this a milk factory?" she asked. Not exactly. But they package drinks here, juice, tea, sometimes flavored milk. She walked slowly, watching each step of the process. From liquid being poured into bottles to machines sealing and labeling. This is amazing, she whispered. Daniel knelt beside her. One day, your milk brand could look just like this. Hope turned to him. Will you help me? He nodded. Of course. But it'll be your idea, your work. I'll just be the guy who shows up with snacks. That night, she drew new sketches in her notebook, bottles, flavors, factory layouts. She wrote down a name at the top of the page. Hope's Promise, milk for every child. Her dream was growing, and Daniel could feel something shifting in him, too. One evening, he took Hope, her siblings, and Grandma to dinner at a small restaurant. It wasn't fancy, but it was cozy and full of laughter. The waiter brought ice cream at the end, on the house once he saw the children. Hope raised her spoon, paused, and looked around the table. Then she said softly, "This is the first time we're all eating out together." Daniel smiled. "First of many." Grandma reached over and placed her hand on his. "You're more than just a helper. You've given them something money can't buy." Daniel didn't know what to say. He just nodded, because he felt it too. This wasn't about milk anymore. It was about dreams, about second chances, about the power of one simple promise. Later that night, back in his apartment, Daniel stood by the window again. But this time, the city lights didn't feel cold. They felt alive, because somewhere out there a little girl had reminded him that success isn't measured by what you have. It's measured by what you give, and how deeply you believe in someone who believes in you. Hope's small hands flipped through her notebook, page after page filled with drawings, ideas, and names. One page said, "Milk with meaning." Another, "Every sip helps someone." But the one she circled again and again was Hope's Promise. Daniel sat across from her at the kitchen table, watching her think harder than most grown-ups he knew. "So what's next?" he asked. She looked up. "We need bottles, and milk, and stickers with the name." He chuckled. "You mean labels?" "Oh, yes," she smiled. "Labels." Daniel leaned forward. "How about we do a small test? We make a few bottles and give them to kids in your school. See what they think." Hope's eyes widened. "Really?" He nodded. "You'll be the boss. I'll just be the helper." The next 2 weeks were full of action. Daniel connected her with a friend who ran a small dairy farm. They let her taste the milk, choose the flavor, plain with a little honey. She helped design the label, drawing a small girl holding a milk carton with the words, "Hope's Promise, made with heart." The first batch was small, just 20 bottles. Hope stood in front of her class and handed them out. Some of her classmates laughed playfully. "Is this really yours?" "Yes," she said proudly. "I made it. I mean, I had help, but it's mine." They took a sip, and they smiled. Later that week, the school counselor called Daniel. "Mr. Kane," she said, "we've never seen a child light up this way. She's leading small group projects, helping other kids read better, and showing up early just to organize books." Daniel smiled. "That's hope. Once she believes in something, she becomes a fire." One afternoon, Hope asked Daniel something different. "Can I give some bottles to the kids who don't bring lunch?" He paused. "Why?" "Because I know how that feels. To sit and pretend you're not hungry." He nodded. "All right, let's do it right. Maybe even make that part of your business, 1 bottle sold, 1 given away." Hope's eyes sparkled. "That's it. That's what I want." A few days later, Daniel and Hope held a small event at the school. There was music, balloons, and tables of milk bottles. On a big sign, written in purple letters, "Hope's Promise. A sip of kindness." Teachers cried. Parents clapped. The local newspaper sent a reporter. They interviewed Hope, and she stood proudly beside Daniel as the camera flashed. "What do you want people to know?" the reporter asked her. Hope looked straight at the camera. "I just want every child to feel seen, and to know they matter. Even if they don't have much, they can still dream. Just like I did." Daniel watched her speak, his chest heavy with emotion. He thought about the day they met, The tug on his sleeve, the plastic bottle, the little voice saying, "I'll pay you back when I grow up." She was already doing it. Not with money, but with purpose, with love, with courage. And as they packed up that day, Hope whispered something quietly. "I don't think I want to be rich." Daniel looked at her. "No," she smiled. "I just want to help people. Like you helped me." Daniel's throat tightened. "Then you'll be richer than most." And with that, the dream moved forward. Not just in bottles or labels, but in the hearts it touched, one child at a time. Months passed. The schoolyard buzzed with excitement each time a new batch of Hope's Promise milk arrived. Some flavors were sweetened with honey, others had a little cocoa. But what never changed was the message on every bottle. A promise made, a promise kept. Hope's face, drawn as a little cartoon girl on the label, became a familiar sight. She didn't become famous, but she became something better, respected. Kids whispered, "That's the girl who gave us milk." Teachers said, "She reminds us what school is really about." And Daniel, he watched her with quiet pride. One day, Hope stood on a small stage at a local youth conference. Her braids were neater now, and she wore a dress Daniel had bought her. A soft yellow one with sunflowers. The microphone trembled in her hands, but her voice was steady. "When I was little," she began, "I asked a man to buy me milk. I told him I would pay him back when I grew up." Soft laughter filled the room. She smiled. "I didn't mean with money. I meant with my heart." She paused, looking out at the crowd. Some kids, some adults, and a few officials. "I learned that you don't have to be big to make a difference. You just have to care. And keep your promises." Applause broke out. Some people wiped their eyes. After the event, Daniel stood beside her quietly. "You did well," he said. She looked up at him. "You always believed in me, even when I was just a little girl with an empty bottle." He smiled. "Because I knew that bottle wasn't empty. It was full of hope." That evening, they walked together through the same grocery store where it all began. Hope stopped in front of the milk aisle. For a moment they both stood still. "This is where I met you," she whispered. Daniel nodded. "And I'm so glad you stopped me." She giggled. "I thought you looked rich and kind. I wasn't sure about the kind part, but I took the risk." They laughed. Then Hope reached for a bottle of Hope's Promise. She held it up and said softly, "I think we both kept our promise." Daniel's eyes grew glassy. He nodded. "Yes, we did." Later that night, as Hope helped her little brother with his reading and her sister with drawing, Grandma sat nearby, knitting a tiny yellow scarf. The apartment was still small, but it felt full of life, of warmth, of dreams. On the table stood a small framed photo of Hope and Daniel, beside the very first milk bottle they ever shared. Above it, written in permanent marker, were 5 simple words: "I'll pay you back someday." And in a way that mattered most, she already had. The promise lived on. We have come to the end of the story. I hope you enjoyed it. Leave a like and subscribe to my YouTube channel for more interesting stories.